What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show, Quest for Dough. I'm your host, Cody Pritchett. Today, I'm really excited for you guys to listen to this podcast. I brought on Conrad Smith, who is the co-founder of Graphite Systems Inc., a procurement business. But it's really interesting. He worked at Adobe for 25 years, had a great job, great benefits, and decided to leave to start something that he truly believed in. But not only for just his business, but like for any startup in the world, with it being software sales or just anything, he has a lot of great insight from, all of the work that he's done, all of his connections, but raising money from angel investors, from the whole process and how long it really took to get everything going. It's really interesting, and it was so cool, and he was such a great guy to meet. And so I'm really excited for you guys to listen and hear the insight that he has to give to you. And if you want to reach out to him, you can reach out to him on LinkedIn. His name is Conrad Smith, and I'm going to bring him on right now. So here he is. Okay, everybody, what's up? So I'm here with Conrad Smith, who is the co-founder of Graphite Systems Inc. They streamline the procurement as they work with suppliers. I'm going to let Conrad explain a little more because he's a little better, but here he is. How's it going, Conrad?
Good. It's good. It's good to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah. So introduce yourself a little bit and explain a little bit more about Graphite.
Sure. So I've mostly worked in large companies. I graduated from BYU and then I went off to work for Intel. I worked for Intel for 15 years, kind of started as a buyer. I didn't even know what a buyer was. I knew Nordstrom had buyers and,
Right.
so I'm like, what am I supposed to do? A lot of people now go to school and learn about procurement. They actually come out in that field. I left Intel after 15 years and I went over to a small company, Omniture, to build out procurement, and they were bought by Adobe just shortly after that. And so I spent the last 10 years or so working at Adobe. The first couple of years working sort of as the lieutenant for the head of procurement there, and then he left. He was a little bit older and took over procurement. So spent quite a bit of time working with the team to build the talent, and then work through a transformation to take that procurement team from being pretty low level of maturity to high level maturity, and really loved that process. One of the reasons I left Intel was because I felt like things were so refined and kind of worked so well that I spent most of my time just turning the crank.
Right. Explain, so like someone like me, I'm not really that familiar with procurement. So explain what that is.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I didn't even know what a buyer was, right? Most people don't know that procurement exists inside of companies. A company like Adobe spends $3 billion a year to buy stuff to make the company work. So at a lot of companies, if you make a product like cars, of course you're buying tires and steering wheels and seats and everything. But if you're working in a company that sells a service or software, then you're buying buildings and you're buying tables and chairs and catering and legal services and anything you can imagine that a company might use, marketing, advertising, all of that stuff adds up. And there's a tremendous amount of spend that goes on there.
Okay.
And somebody needs to keep an eye on that. Generally, the individuals in the company, they want to get their project done, and they don't care that much if they spend an extra 10 or 15 or 20%. And somebody coming in and being willing to, some people naturally want to go to negotiate and buy a car or whatever. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people to say, hey, can I get a better price? But
Right.
Procurement people love to do that, and simply by asking for a better deal or putting together a strategy about how to do the negotiation, you can save a lot of money. I mean, there's huge savings that come as procurement organizations come in, and not just savings, but value as they come in and start working with suppliers to make sure that things are working well. And that huge investment, I mean, imagine being responsible for $3 billion. You want to get a return out of that money. You want it to work. So that's procurement. That's the goal of procurement.
Okay. And so Graphite, explain Graphite and its role in procurement.
So you can imagine you don't go spend $3 billion with just kind of a drawer of cash. You have to have processes that make things work. So if you're in a large organization, you fill out a form, a request to buy something. They call that a purchase requisition. That flows through an approval process and eventually makes it to purchasing, who turns it into a purchase order. The purchase order goes to the supplier, notifies them. Often that goes with a contract, notifies them that there's agreement to do a deal with them or for them to do to deliver goods or services, and then there's invoice and payment. I mean, that's kind of the process. Early in that process, hopefully, it's not always before all those things happen, because often the project manager at the company is going to go off and find a supplier and start talking, and you want them to show up on Monday and start working, but they haven't realized that there's a whole bunch of internal processes that need to take place in onboarding that supplier. And the Graphite, we call our application Graphite Connect. Graphite Connect is targeted on streamlining that process of onboarding suppliers and bringing them into the company.
Okay.
And this has gotten way more complicated than it was when I started my career. 25 years ago, we faxed over this little short form, and suppliers would fill it out and fax it back, and we could pay them the next day or something. Right. But with concerns about data breaches, cybersecurity, data privacy, a whole bunch of other regulations, you got to be, particularly as you grow, our organization is 11 people right now, so we're not super, we are concerned about security and privacy, but we're not spending a lot of time vetting and investigating all of our suppliers. We have built on the Google Cloud, and there's a tremendous amount of trust and confidence in the Google Cloud.
Okay.
But larger companies are very heavily invested and required to go out and do this due diligence with their suppliers. So that's just grown. It's become this big thing now. Now they can spend, days or weeks or even months. One of the prospects that we talked to up the road has a 4-month delay in their cybersecurity team reviewing the suppliers to be onboarded and do business. 4 months. So imagine you're really all fired up about doing a project inside the company, and it all just kind of comes to a screeching halt because you got to wait 4 months.
Right.
To engage with that supplier. They can't come, they can't finish their contract, they can't start the work. And generally those, people that are in that mode, the project managers haven't even anticipated this. So they're just madder than a hornet. They're really pissed that, right. I made commitments, this thing was going to be done this year, and where is it in the process?
Okay. Awesome. So we'll get more into kind of like the details of your day-to-day behind Graphite later on, but let's go to the beginning. So you told me earlier that you worked for 25 years in a different industry, and then you switched. You made the career change. You started your own business. So I want to get, go back to the moment where this idea came into place, and then how it kind of all played out from there.
So my whole life, I've always thinking of these ideas. What this would be really cool, and it's kind of bugged me when I'll sit and see some cool idea that someone else invented and think, why didn't I invent that?
Right.
And it's dumb stuff that makes millions of dollars, like these cardboard things that block the sun out of the windshield. It's like, it's such a dumb thing, but somebody's simple. Making a lot of money, right? And anyway, I won't run through all the great ideas that I've had over the years that I never took action on. Right. But I've had hundreds of these ideas. And I don't know, over 6 years ago, I remember it was in November of that year, I was sitting around like frustrated with myself that I didn't invent Facebook. I mean, like everybody else, right? This Honestly. Is because it's really simple, right? If you just look at it now in hindsight, it's like, yeah, that was really dumb. How come I didn't think of that?
Yeah, it's just a simple Facebook page.
Yeah, like, of course, you're going to want a place to just share everything with all of your friends instead of. And then I was like, wow, yeah, okay, but how about LinkedIn? Why didn't I invent LinkedIn?
Right.
I actually started going through my head like, these were really good ideas. Why didn't I think of those? And then I remember just stopping and thinking, well, okay, so there's these social networks. There's me and my friends and family, and then there's my professional colleagues. And I'm thinking, is there any social network that doesn't exist already that I could be like the guy who invented that thing? And for some reason, there's no social network that connects businesses. Like that's totally doesn't like. No Facebook or LinkedIn name pops into my head. Like, what is the social network that connects businesses? And my first response was, yeah, that's kind of dumb because businesses don't need to share photos of what they had for dinner and stuff like that. Right? And then because I'm in procurement and I've been through these processes of collecting all this data from these suppliers, it was just like this giant light bulb in my head went, but wait a minute. Companies share data back and forth all the time in order to do business. Like, and it's the same idea. It's the same data over and over and over again. It was just like, boom, like this huge epiphany. Like, this is really cool.
That's awesome.
But it's.
So when you had that big epiphany, you're like, you know what, this is it. Were you just like next day quit everything, or like, what did you do right then?
Well, I told you I have these ideas. I also have this other part of my personality, which is I'm really comfortable. I actually went into my career thinking, my dad's done real estate. He's had apartments and everything, very entrepreneurial family. But like, yeah, I think I'm just going to climb the corporate ladder. I'm going to be executive. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to work, 40 or 50 hours a week. Everything's going to be great. And after 25 years, I was making a lot of money. I had a great team, a great job, a great company. Everything was going really great. And so, I was super comfortable. Comfort is the killer of great ideas.
Right.
When you're really hungry and you're really desperate, I think that you're willing to try things and take risks, but it was hard for me to do that. On top of that, when you get hired into any company these days, you sign these employment agreements that basically say anything you think about at any time at all when you're on our payroll, if it has any connection at all to the job that you do, we own that.
Right.
This is a procurement idea, and I was a procurement professional. So I'm like, this is one of those things that the company is going to want to own if it's meaningful.
Right.
And again, in this comfort mode, I was like, you know what? I really, really want to build this thing. It's going to change how businesses work, but I'd rather not build it outside. Adobe has such a great brand. I could sell this all day long with the Adobe brand. It would be so easy. It would be so fun. I can keep my comfort, but I can still build this awesome thing. That was the lie I was kind of telling myself for a while. And so I went inside and I'm trying to convince all these managers and leaders across Adobe that this is going to be a great idea. And they just didn't want anything to do with it. I kept shopping it around to all these leaders, and they were like, well, in order for something like this to work in the company, you've got to get an executive behind it to sponsor it.
Right.
And so I started talking to them, and there really is some great opportunities where this would and could be a great synergy with Adobe, but the truth is it's not a great fit.
Right.
And because meeting with executives at a company take months. It's like, hey, I want to get on the calendar of the CIO, the CTO, the CFO, and this other VP of product. I need all the four of them in the meeting. Getting a meeting like that's not business critical. It's more like, oh, well, we can do that in July or August.
Right.
So it consumed like 2 or 3 years of time.
Okay.
Just starting to iterate through things. I didn't just drop and run. I sort of tried. I really did want to figure out a way to build it inside the company. And looking back, that was just totally stupid. I mean, I wasted so much time. I wish I was 3 years further down the road today, right now, than I am, that I wasted on time inside the company. Right. But I also felt compelled to deal with this.
Right. This
IP issue effectively. And that's what we did.
Right. And who knows, if you tried building it from within, it would have led you to a different route that you're not where you're at right now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that happened is during those 3 years, Adobe stock just continued to explode. So personally, I generated enough wealth, and not that I'm this massively rich person, but early in my career, I was living sort of paycheck to paycheck and bag of diapers and food to bag of diapers and food, right? It was really challenging. But, over those years and Adobe's growth and me being in an executive position really helped me tremendously to get to a place where I could say, you know what, leaving now isn't as big as a risk as it would have been like 10 years ago.
Right.
My kids are growing up, they're in college or married or whatever. And I've amassed a little bit of money. And if it all doesn't work out, I can go back and get another job. So
right.
I just kind of want to touch on a piece there, because as I left the company, the final point was I didn't want to leave. In fact, investors that I was kind of poking around the idea with started to ask, well, who owns this idea? Does Adobe have any claim to this idea? And so I spent almost another year working through the process of getting Adobe to give me the idea and give me a documentation that the idea would be mine.
Okay.
So it was challenged, but then we're clear. And yeah, I wouldn't, I wish I had those 3 years back at this point, but like you said, who knows what really would have happened. We did mature the idea quite a bit. And during that time, my co-founder, he and I worked together in that business, and we would come in really early in the mornings and, meet for breakfast and talk about the idea and try and figure out how we could advance the idea. And so we continued to build and grow it out conceptually. Before we jumped and ran.
So your co-founder, what is his name?
Aron Euler.
And he worked with you at Adobe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the nice things is, and I was talking to somebody who's wanting to start up a business as well. And he's got the business domain expertise, but he doesn't have like a technology background. And the lucky thing I have with Aron is Aron spent 10 years writing software before he went and got his MBA and come to work for me at Adobe. So we complement each other really nicely. We have different personalities. He's super technical and process driven, and I'm a little less in those areas. And when we went off and started the company, it's like, okay, well, this was my idea. He and I agreed how we'd split up the equity and everything. And what it really meant is he's going to focus on the product and the technology, and I'm going to focus on all the other stuff. And so I have this stupid title of being the CEO, which in a startup, all that really means is you do everything else. You have product, and then the CEO is doing payroll and processing expense reports and doing all of this ridiculous stuff. Which, of course, I mean it needs to get done. But it's funny. It's not the glory position in a startup role to be in charge of all that other stuff.
Right.
It's a real privilege and a blessing for me, and I love what we've created and the work that we do. But he's got the skill and talent to be in the product and the technology, super deep into the kind of a lot of the code and the code and the data. And I'm focused on sales and all the finance side, funding, and all those things that you have to do.
Sounds like the dream team.
Yeah, we work really well together. It's awesome.
That's exciting. So once you guys, you came up you took the 3 years kind of thinking around the idea and everything, and then you quit Adobe, and then you just started it right then.
Well, there's an interesting thing that happened, right? Because through this whole thing, Aron kept encouraging me. I don't know why he's had such an aptitude to be willing to quit the corporate job and go do something, go push the startup, but he's very driven that way. And so as over the years, he kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. So even though it could have been quote unquote my idea or whatever, he's actually been a lot of the engine that's moved us forward during that time we were at Adobe, and as we came to the end of that as well. It's been really cool. But as we got to these certain milestones in going through that process, one of the things that we did, and it took us, I would advise anybody to find just awesome technology people to work with.
Right.
The person I was talking with yesterday was like, well, I've got this idea and I'm going to hire these developers in the Philippines to build it for me. And I'm thinking, yeah, I really wouldn't do that.
Right.
I mean, we took about 7 months searching, because we didn't have the network here in Utah, into these super high-end developer folks, people with 20 to 25 years of experience building super cool tech. They call them like 10x developers,
right,
or top 1%ers. We finally found this group that kind of, as soon as we found one, and it was funny because we took him out to lunch, we bought him a sandwich, and he was like, yeah, this is a really cool idea, but I'm in the middle of this other startup right now, and yeah, they'll fall apart if I leave. I can't leave.
Right.
We're like, well, maybe, think about it. Let's talk some more. He called us back that night and said, I went home and talked to my wife, and she said, what's the harm in having another lunch with him? And that was, that meeting where we had that Philly sandwich with him was sort of the beginning of finally, after 6 months, we met him, he introduced us to somebody else, and then 3 or 4 other people, and we ended up with a core team of 4 developers that were going to join us. At this time, we're still working at Adobe. We're just making sure we have all the viability behind this thing to make it a real thing, right, before we quit our jobs. And these guys quit their jobs. I hadn't emotionally prepared myself to quit my job, and they quit their jobs.
Right. And
so I never really had to make the decision personally, because there's no way I'm going to convince these people this is a great idea. But when we did and they quit their jobs, I was like, okay, the decision's made. It's no longer a decision I need to make. We're going. We now have 4 families, plus our own 2 families, 6 families, and now we're up to 11 families that we need to support in this business, and it's a real serious thing.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. That was kind of like it is real when these people actually quit their jobs and we quit our jobs. And it was a year ago this week actually that we moved into these offices right here.
Okay.
The Saturday before, that same developer who we went to lunch with first, the business that he was at actually did close down right about this time. They were shutting down their office, and we went in, and for $500 we got all of this furniture.
Wow.
Minus the monitors and
right,
stuff, but it was a smoking good deal.
Okay, so that's exciting, and especially that it's your 1 year kind of anniversary for moving in here.
Yeah.
So did you just, with your own money, start this with the money you'd saved, or did you said you went out and got investors? Kind of how did you?
Yeah, so I'd had enough money to kind of bootstrap this, and it was really, I didn't know what to do. I mean, anybody going into this for the first time is thinking, hey, I don't want to give any of this away. I want it all for myself.
Right.
And, I don't think that's greedy. I think it's just fear-based. Like, what happens if I give up some control? Am I going to get tossed to the side? Am I going to work really hard and there's not going to be any rewards at the end of this thing? But we just didn't know how to deal with that.
Right.
It's tricky. So I thought we'll bootstrap it. And the best, one of the advisors that we got is a super smart engineer from a storage company out in the Bay Area. He was, sorry, tangent. There's so many people that are willing to help. I don't know why, but in the startup world, people are willing to take time and meet with you.
Right.
It's like someone helped me, I'll help you.
Right.
And I'm a bit of an introvert, but I've found so many people that will drop what they're doing and spend time with me that, I will do the same thing for anybody that I can to help them along the way. Because it's really hard and it's confusing. It's a whole new language and new process. And anyway, I was unsure about what to do. And everyone that I talked to, I got introduced to different investors and different founders and people that had been through the process, successful and less successful. And everybody said, well, just take it as far as you can on your own. Right. As soon as you take somebody else's money, you're going to take dilution, and the percentage of dilution that you're going to take is going to vary dramatically based on how far along you are.
Right.
And that's absolutely, that makes common sense and it's true. So we were trying to do that. At the same time, over these years that I was working on this, particularly sort of the last year before I quit my job, I really started having serious conversations with executives and high net worth friends that I have in the area. And they really believed in me as a person and the experience I was bringing to the table. Almost everybody said, like, what I love the most about your idea is that it's so closely connected to what you've spent the last 25 years doing. Like, this business. This will be a procurement app built by procurement people.
Right.
And we've had customers now that tell us the same thing. Like, I'm so glad you did this. It's the first time that we actually finally a procurement person is trying to solve the problem, because when you get an engineer or technology or these other things that comes in, it ends up being a crap solution, right? Because it isn't really an understanding of the core business problems. But these angels, and I love that. I actually love that name because that's very indicative of who they are. They're like, yeah, I believe in what you're doing, and they were willing to write checks. Some of them wrote some really big checks, and I put once we got the company organized and set up a bank account, I put some of my own money in there to start covering payroll, and within a month, these angels' money started showing up in the bank account as well.
Wow.
And that was sort of, we wanted to close a round of angel funding by the end of January. So by this time, we ended up with more money than we anticipated. But at the same time, some of these angels, really good friends of mine, suggested that they wanted to do a priced round instead of a convertible note round. And a convertible note basically just means when you do a priced round, they get to convert that amount of money into that priced round.
Right.
So I don't know if you want me to explain that at all, but it is kind of interesting to people that haven't been through the process. But you tell me how far you want to go down into that.
If you feel like this will be something that you want to remember.
Yeah. So I'll just give a minute or two on it. Right. If you were to give me $100,000 into my business on a convertible note, then your return on that, you're going to say, well, what am I going to get for that? And I'm going to have to say, well, I really don't know. We'll see when we take money, and we'll know at that point how much $100,000 is worth. We'll give you a discount. Maybe you're going to get a 20% discount on that $100,000 against maybe I'm going to raise $10 million. And so you're going to get $120,000 worth of value of that $10 million raise.
Right.
If if it was valued at $1 million instead of $10 million, then the amount it's valued is going to dramatically change what you get out of that. Okay. And so you have some uncertainty. You're like, yeah, I really trust Conrad and this is cool, but what am I really going to get out of this? And frankly, you do better in that deal if my valuation is lower.
Right. Yeah. I imagine someone getting in with a lower valuation.
Yeah. So, but I do better if my valuation's higher.
Right.
And so what these friends of mine said is we actually want to do a price round now, because then we're all on the same page. From that moment forward, we all do better with a higher valuation.
Right.
We're not going to be thinking against your high valuation or working against it or wishing against it.
They're not trying to get in early to get lucky.
Yeah.
They're trying to support you, but all because they believe in it.
Exactly. And so we decided to do that. We pivoted really quick. We got a local Several of them sit on boards and work with a local VC here called Kickstart. And Kickstart, we had talked to them before, but as all of these key angels came together with us, we very quickly made a deal. I mean, quickly verbally, but then of course all the paperwork and everything took like another 6 or 8 weeks.
Right.
But that was awesome. It was great to see all that support come together. And that came together at the point where we actually had our first customer signed in March. So we closed the round in April. We already had a product that was live in production. We had a customer, and that's when we took the funding round. So it's not like we sort of bootstrapped, if you want to think about it this way, through the conceptual and the prototyping and, the early viability sort of stuff. And then we had the money and we're starting to build out with real customers.
Right. That's exciting. I mean, from just you explaining it, it sounds like it went really well and smoothly because you believe in what you do and you know what you do. But like, tell me, like, was it smooth? Was there ups and downs? Like, how do you feel like it went? Do you feel like you're prepared enough that when you quit and started it, you were like, okay, this is awesome because I'm prepared and it's going great? Or
well, like I said, the vocabulary is totally different. So I'd be meeting with people early on and they're talking about stuff, especially a couple of my angels are super smart attorneys that in 2 minutes they're using words that just scare the crap out of me. I have no idea what they're talking about. So it was a massive learning experience to try and get comfortable with what these things are.
Right.
I mean, I'm in my heart of hearts, my 100% goal is to help everybody that believes in us and all of our early team. If we make a lot of money, I want everybody to share in that.
Right.
There's been a couple of stories around Utah of organizations been wildly successful. And that wealth has been super concentrated with a smaller handful of people.
Right.
And that's not what I wanted to create. So when we went into this, I really do want these angels to make a lot of money on this. If we make money, I want them to be successful. It isn't about being greedy and holding this thing. I want them to be successful, but I don't know how to approach this and how to make it work.
Right.
And I didn't know whether everyone's always like, don't give away too much of your company too early and give away control. I mean, there's tons of fear stuff out there that you can get your head wrapped around, and it's kind of scary. I mean, you have this baby, you spend a lot of time and emotion, you sacrifice, you take big risks, you leave your comfortable job, and what's this thing going to turn into? And there's plenty of stories where, I think the early founders of Ancestry didn't walk away with a ton because just the way things kind of came together there. So there are plenty of places you can trip up,
right,
and make bad decisions along the way. And I think that's probably what worries me the most still than what worried me then is like, what are the most important decisions that I really don't want to get wrong? But that's where having people, I talked about people that are willing to help and not try and do it on your own and be open and, be willing to say, I really have no idea what to do with this, and have people around you that you really do trust.
Right.
And, I have, some of these people that are angel investors, they were willing to sit down with me and even share advice that's probably contrary to their own personal well-being in the deal, just to help me kind of navigate things. And that's just awesome to have people like that. And that's what I would say. If you really don't know what you're doing, you better get people around you that you really trust that can help you figure it out.
Right. Just from meeting you, for the 20 minutes before we started this podcast and now, I feel like it'd be very easy to invest in you. Mm-hmm. You're very, you're easy to get along with. You're nice. You care. And I bet everyone else sees that too. But so you got it up to where it's now. So kind of tell me where it's at right now, like your day to day, what it involves, and kind of what you guys are working on at this moment.
So let me just talk about 2019, right? Because all of this stuff happened in the beginning of 2019. Our goal, kind of looking at this, and it's funny because and this probably happens with everybody. You're like, this idea is so good. Right. That as soon as we open the doors, like we're not going to be able to hold people away. So we got to have all these support and process. And we have all this stuff figured out. And the truth is, the idea is awesome, but people don't understand it. They don't know what it is. They're kind of in their, stuck in their existing processes or tools or whatever they have.
Right.
So, you launch, you do things, and nobody shows up.
Right.
And we went live with our first customer, who's a good friend of mine that had worked and collaborated on the idea over those years as well. As I was trying to decide to leave, I was being very open with a lot of individuals that I trust to ask them, would you buy this thing? And he was such a big believer and provided a lot of input into kind of the conceptual prototypes along the way that it was easy for him to buy in. And funny enough, he ended up at this, between the time that he said, I want to be your first customer, he went to 4 different jobs and ended up at the same storage company in the Bay Area where the advisor was that was helping us. Oh. Total coincidence. Right. And that company kind of bought into it. That helped tremendously to have an early customer in there that we could start working with. Because whatever our assumptions were at the beginning, it all changes as you go live and you start right. working with customers. Even though we're domain experts in this process, my partner and I actually ran this process in this business for Adobe for 5 years. Right. You still just have one view of it, and there's just a lot of latitude in how people look at the problem and how they want to solve it. And so bringing more customers in and getting their advice and their feedback is hugely important.
For sure. People
talk about like product customer fit and, we have a customer, so we have product customer fit. No, you kind of have this really immature product that a customer has trusted you enough to buy into it, almost like an investor. Like the first customers are taking that kind of a bet on you.
Right.
Like, I believe in you. I believe in the idea. What you have is just a little better than crap, but it's going to get better, right? And over the year, it gets better. So the first year, and that's been I think we didn't, 3 years ago, I wouldn't have said, hey, the first year, we're just going to work on getting the product right. But that's really what this year has been about. We finished the year with about 10 customers, and one's an awesome big, like $12 billion software company. And this is just it's really awesome to kind of get to that point, but right. It takes time to make sure the product that you have really has the functionality and capability that customers are going to be willing to pay for it.
For sure.
And not just your good friend kind of customers, but you can scale that out and go from 5 customers to 10 customers to 1,000 to 10,000 to, in our case, we want to have, our vision is that every company on the planet is sitting inside this platform. Kind of like LinkedIn, like everyone that you might want to know professionally is in LinkedIn.
Right.
Our vision is everybody ends up in here. So
okay. So did you guys hire like salespeople, or was it just like someone like you reaching out through like connections? How did you get people to come on?
Yeah, so you're looking at this. I told you I do all these other jobs, right? So right. I'm the CIO, the CFO, the guy who processes expense reports, and I do all the sales, right? So. Okay. And marketing, like it's like I started the year kind of doing it all, and I felt really inadequate because I spent most of my career has been the purchasing guy on the buy side of the table, and now the role's reversed, and now I'm trying to sell to purchasing people, which is super awkward because right. I'm spending most of my career trying to slow down deals and negotiate a better price, and now I'm trying to speed it up and convince people to move forward and to trust me. And that's tricky, but I'm the sales guy. I'm doing, I'm primarily that first year of sales is working with the people that
Yeah. I mean, when you call these people, they're not talking to their typical sales guy. They're talking to someone who's been there, done that, knows the industry just as good as them.
Yeah.
And so I imagine for them to relate to you has been easy, and for them to understand, what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think that's made it easy. I can't imagine like quitting my job and deciding I'm going to do something that's way off of what my experience is, and then right. calling somebody up and trying to convince them. So like I said, the customers are making a bet on you, just like the investors. Like, yeah, this is good, but it's not great. But I'm trusting you, and they're trusting you the same reason investors are. I mean, if you talk to investors in the early stage, they're like, I'm investing in the person and the team.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And the idea is interesting, but it's the person and the team. Everybody knows that you're going to pivot a couple of times between now and then, kind of from a success perspective. So,
sure.
And the customers are doing the same thing. I'm investing in this team. These are procurement people working on a procurement problem, and I trust them.
Okay, that's awesome. So you said you guys have 10 customers. You said
yeah,
and a really big count with a software company. So did you, like, when you started it, did it take you, were you nervous? Like, that's awesome that you have, right now, it's a proven concept and people are paying you. But like, was there, like, what was that feeling of like getting an account that big, or getting up to 10 accounts? Was it like, were you nervous that it might not happen, and so it was like relief, or was it like you knew this was going to happen and maybe it's not going as fast as you wanted?
I wish I could say that there's like this feeling that carries through time in a situation like this, but there's days of elation, like a customer comes on and signs with you. And then there's days of absolute, like, I don't know, dark valleys of is this really going to happen? Is this really as good as we thought it was? Am I just crazy? So the demons of discouragement and depression are real.
Right.
And, you got to expect that. I mean, people will tell you the same thing. There's all the highs and the lows. And that's really, I mean, you talked about the hard parts, through the process. I think it's working, it's staying committed through the process and staying committed to the idea and believing, and not committed like I'm not willing to pivot if and when that need arises.
Right.
But do I want to go back to my comfortable life? Sometimes that would be really nice.
Right.
I mean, I hesitate to share this because it sounds so first world, right? But Adobe did so well. My wife's dream has been to have a little house in Hawaii. So we bought a little house in Hawaii. I mean, it's a little house, but any house in Hawaii costs a lot of money.
Right.
And we're just super blessed to have that there. But my wife, she's like a big wave photographer now. So she spends tons of time on the beach. And she'll go over there for a month or two. And in my comfortable job, I could go over there for 2 weeks, work for a week, and take a vacation for a week anytime she was there. And I can't do that now. So I see her kind of come and go, and she and I both kind of look at each other like, man, it was way better when you were in that comfortable job.
Right.
But there's those moments where, she's gone and I'm alone, and, maybe it's been, a month since we closed a deal that we wanted or have had some good news or whatever it might be. And it's like, why am I doing this?
Well, because one day it'll be a big house in Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, hopefully. She said after flying home this last time, I don't need a private jet or anything. I just want to get into first class. The economy is so uncomfortable. Right. It's like, that's still going to be a while, honey, Right. But it's just working through the hard times that come up. And I think, you gotta, if anyone wants to start something new, I would say everybody does.
Right.
Everybody has that idea. They always want, like, what if I could do this? And it might be something at work. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to start a new business, but I want to start something new. People don't do it. They don't step up to the starting line. They don't say, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to go do it. And so the biggest failure comes by not even showing up.
Right.
Like you're unwilling to cross the starting line. So you're never going to get to the finish line.
Right.
I run marathons. It's just something I do to, I don't know, because I'm crazy, but
pastime.
But like in the marathon, you've got all these middle miles where the excitement of the starting line isn't there.
Right.
Like a year ago when we set up desks and took all these pictures and we had all this, I mean, you have all this adrenaline about this idea. And then you just like the marathon, you get into these middle miles where you're slogging it along and you just have to put one foot, you get to the finish line on a marathon. I don't care who you are, you can get there. You just have to keep going.
Right.
And there's going to be times you're like, oh my gosh, my knee is killing me, or, why am I doing this? This is dumb. It's too hot, or it's too cold, or you just have to keep going.
Right.
And so I think just working through those difficult times, and it's nice having a partner that I'm working with on it. I can't imagine doing it alone. I mean, Aron's been awesome, and my wife has been awesome. And when in discouraging moments, if everyone was down at the same moment, it would be kind of hard.
Right.
But my partner will be like, oh man, like, what are we going to do if this big software deal doesn't come through? Is this all really worth it? And I'm like, of course it's worth it. If we don't get that deal, we'll go get another one. We know that's a good idea. And so I'll kind of carry him through those times, and he'll carry me through my tough times.
Wow.
So just keep going.
It's true. You got to keep going. It's nice to have a partner. I mean, so tell me, so you went over the beginning, you went over 2019. So tell me kind of now, like, what your day-to-day looks like, what you're working on.
Well, today we signed another deal.
Okay, that's exciting.
It showed up in the mail. We've been waiting for it. We've been waiting for it for months, but procurement deals are like the last thing that get worked on in a company. So we've been waiting for year end and a whole bunch of other things to kind of clear legal at this particular customer.
Okay.
And it showed up today. So we had a high five, and Aron and I have this tradition to play Jack Johnson songs on our little Alexa in there on a contract day. So, it was a good day. It was one of those really highlight days. We have, it's one of the things that's really cool, that really sad, but cool as well. I mean, I don't know quite how to say this and kind of share this, but it is pretty meaningful to us. one of the angels was Don Cash. A lot of people in Utah are going to know who Don Cash is. He was a big sales guy. He's moved around and to a variety of different companies, been incredibly successful from a sales perspective.
Okay.
He was one of the Utahns that passed away in Everest last May. He got to the top. His goal was to summit the 7 summits, and Everest was his last one. He got to the top, and then he had some challenges at the top and didn't make it down. But so this is part of why I love the angels metaphor so much, because he's like, I mean, how many startups have a literal angel sitting on top of Mount Everest looking down over everything that's going on? But he's so well connected that even people, like one of the advisors that we have now was sort of a mentee of Don Cash.
Right.
And he's joined in and really worked with us on our go-to-market strategy.
Okay.
And just spent hours and hours trying to help us with things. And I go back to him and I say, well, I'd like to pay you or something for your time. And he's like, no, I'm doing this for Don.
Oh.
So there's so many people along the way that are willing to help for so many different reasons.
Right.
But this guy, Stan, again, is a really successful sales guy, and he's stepped in and helped us. We've now hired, part of the challenge early on is not to get too experienced or senior of a person in from a sales perspective. You want the right level of person.
Right.
And Ian, the guy that you met earlier on, he's working in marketing and sales with us, and he's just been on the job this week, and it's amazing to see what he's doing from a sales perspective. Just because, again, I'm a purchasing guy, I don't know how to do this, and you get somebody in here that knows how to do it, and the stuff he doesn't know, just like a startup guy, he's out there talking to the head of sales at Canopy and everybody else that he can talk to get advice to figure out how do we approach sales. Right. So 2019 really was all about this customer product fit. And when I look at 2020, what I want to accomplish a year from now, I want to say, you know what, we know how to go to market with this product.
For sure.
And you have to test those things, just like you have to test the product to see, is this going to work? You have to test, how do we generate leads and interest and people that are willing to sign contracts and do deals? And how long does that take? And what do they look like? And do we start at the C-suite, or do we start down in purchasing, or do we start, there's all these questions that when I sit down with folks, and when we did this in December, we kind of had a go-to-market jam session, and people started asking me all these questions. Well, what does the data say about this? And what does the data say about that? I'm like, well, we have 10 contracts. I don't have statistical data. Right. So this year we've got to test, just like we test the product, we got to test go to market. So a year from now we'll be able to say, okay, we're going to take some money. We'll do a Series A late in 2020 or early, sometime in 2021, depending on how revenue looks and how our sales are going. Right. And then we'll scale this thing. We'll start to really deliver on that vision. Okay.
Well, I wanted to get more into that. So like I was telling you, the purpose behind this podcast is for you to journal this, and it's not how I built this, and Conrad Smith built this $1 billion company, and here he is for 20 minutes. I've got you at the beginning stages, which is really cool for me to see, but also for everyone else and for yourself. So, you're right here. And so what I want to do is like you said, I want to kind of see your vision for the next year, couple of years. And then I also want to know your vision 10 years down the road, or what this could possibly be. And then, when I
see how it changes over time.
Right. And so whether when something new happens in 6 months or a year, I'll keep bringing you on for you to kind of document it. And then in 10 years, when it is what it is, you can go back and listen to all these and kind of see your thought process through it all. So kind of tell me right now, what do you envision in a year to 2 years for Graphite? You're kind of explaining it already, but
So we started a year ago. When we left Adobe, we had 4 developers, and we had sort of a couple contractors that were working with us, and me and Aron. So we were I can't remember exactly the dates of some of these other individuals that have joined us, but we had 6 or 7 people when we started. We're up to 11 now. My goal is to stay super lean. I mean, it's weird because you're juggling all these priorities of we got to sell, we got to grow, right? And we got to do that faster than the competition. But at the same time, we're sitting on this pile of cash that our investors have trusted us with, and we need to stretch that out as far as possible. So if we can delay that Series A by an extra 6 or 12 months, we can probably, collect twice as much money out of the Series A for half the valuation or something. I mean, big sort of dilution levers that kick in depending on what you accomplish between now and then.
Right.
So we're really focused on not overgrowing. It's easy to spend a lot of money and have really expensive digs. I mean, you've seen our offices here. This is a cool place to build a business. I thought we might actually like rent a house and kind of do the Silicon Valley thing, because you could probably rent a house for a couple of $1,000s a month.
Right.
That's what we're getting these offices with here, and we have access to. It's nice.
Right.
But we're gonna keep doing this. We're gonna stay scrappy. When Ian came in, we took another room on the back hallway here, and until it really financially doesn't make sense to just kind of keep paying room by room to continue to grow, then we're going to stay here. So I imagine a year from now, we're probably still in these digs, and we probably have another 2 or 3 or 4 rooms. I don't want to end 2020 with, 100 employees. Right. My guess is we could maybe, if things really go well, we could be up to like 20 employees at the end of the year.
Okay.
But that's really only going to be driven by the increase in customers and the increase in effort to support them.
Right.
We absolutely recognize and understand that our success is 100% connected to our customers being happy. They need to love what we're doing. One of the most exciting anniversary dates coming up will be the first contract we signed was in March.
Okay.
And we'll have our first renewal. I mean, it's cool to have your first customer, but when that same customer says, I still believe in what you're doing, like after a year, your team and your product and everything we're doing, it's still messy, but I love it enough that we're going to sign up for another year or 2 or 3. So that's a really big deal. So we'll hire the people that we need to support our customers so that all of them feel that same way and that they can all, give us real positive references. This is the type of business where it's a 2-sided network. Any of our customers are better off if their 5 peers, even competitors, join the network as well. Because as more suppliers come into the network has more and more of the data that they need on demand instead of waiting around for a few days or a few weeks to get that data back from their suppliers.
Right.
So a happy customer means they're going to be sort of bringing in their 10 or 20 or 50 best friends. They're going to sell for us. And that's kind of obvious. Everyone would say that, word of mouth and a satisfied customer. But in a 2-sided network like what we're building out, it's more important than ever.
Okay.
So we'll grow based on that. I'd like to have, and I don't think we'll be reporting out actual numbers, but we won't through the podcast, but I'd like to have another, a $1 or $2 million of annual recurring revenue built up over the next 12 months. That's kind of our target that we're trying to figure out how to go do this year. It's early stages, and that would be awesome.
How many clients would you need to hit that?
Well, it depends, because these large agreements can be, $100,000 to $300,000 a year. Right. So that would be a few. We're sort of looking at it like let's get half of whatever our yearly money is, or our yearly recurring revenue, from big companies, and let's get the other half from small companies.
Right.
And our platform is, our vision in the platform is that any company of any size, I mean, everybody has to pay their supplier. The city of Lehigh or Salt Lake or Provo or BYU or the University of everybody has to collect this same basic data. When I was at Adobe, like Raleigh, North Carolina sent over requests for a supplier onboarding form and a W-9 from Adobe. Like everybody that's buying from you needs this stuff from you. So all those buying organizations need it. And so we'll explore, and this is part of go-to-market, like where do we get the most traction right now? Our goal is to build the network, and the large organizations are bringing big bundles of suppliers. So that the large software company has 10 or 20,000 suppliers that they're going to bring to the network. The suppliers are sort of voluntold that you have to go do this, and they want to get paid, so they do, right?
Right.
Smaller organizations are probably a little easier to sell to, but they're bringing in a smaller group of suppliers as well. And for us, at least, the suppliers joining the network is equally important to revenue.
For sure. So now I want to take, 10 years down the road, 15 years, when this has hit the moment where, you get to pay back everyone, what do you envision the company like then?
Well, I've always said I never would have quit my comfy job to just build a boring little procurement app.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to talk about, on mic about all of our big long-term vision, grandiose ideas. But this thing just doesn't exist anywhere else. This is that social network that I was telling you about.
Right.
If we can create this, like LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn was valued at something like $40 billion or something before they dropped back down into the 20s and were scooped up by Microsoft.
Okay.
I mean, these are big companies, and I mean, these are big dollars and big ideas. I'd like to go public. I don't really want to sell.
Okay.
And have some exit. I'm not in this to make money. I mean, I'd like to have more money than I have. Everybody would, but this isn't about money for me. I mean, we've accomplished just about everything that we wanted as a family in that regard. I want to build something awesome. So for me, it's building the network, building the ecosystem, and creating the opportunity to transform how businesses work with each other. It's just, I mean, you can look at how things have changed on the individual side of how you do business and how you buy stuff. Amazon's a great example. Like, I thought Amazon was such a dumb idea early on, just because, like, you'd think about, like, I can go to the store. That's because I did that my whole life. Like, I can go to the store. That's easy.
Right.
Why would I buy something online and pay extra shipping? And then Amazon Prime shows up, and it's like, well, I'm not really paying extra shipping. I mean, it's wrapped up into the cost of things, I guess. But but it's so nice to just go, okay, buy now. I mean, today alone, I've done buy now once or twice already. And that's transformed radical transformation on how things work at an individual level. At a corporate level, pretty much works the same.
Right.
Companies buy from companies. I don't know, a few hundred years ago, you would kind of chisel it into a stone, and then it turned into paper, and then it turned into fax machines and emails and some websites. But generally, I mean, there are a few exceptions, but generally businesses buy from each other the same way they did 100 years ago. And it's just crazy. And everybody knows it. Like, they're signing contracts and they're pushing things around, and paper and NDAs and all this process stuff that's just overhead. It's friction. You know, our motto is less friction, more business. Like, we want to take the friction out of business, and we think all of that stuff can be really transformed if we can build this and make it successful. And not just, I mean, companies like Walmart, they do these super automation techniques and processes with their supply chain.
Right.
Home Depot, these giant companies with huge IT investments. But that ought to be available for everybody. No matter, I mean, even if you're a small business, you ought to be able to, think about the Uber drivers and Airbnb and how automated that process has become on that consumer side of the business. You have an app, you take some pictures of your house, and you're online and you're selling, and people are registering. I mean, it's super online, right? No, that's not happening on the business side. Generally, business to business.
Right.
And the small, like the designers or there's a zillion small businesses and mid-sized businesses that are still stuck with chisels and rocks in terms of figuring out how to make things work. It's really hard and it's tough. So the dream is to attack that vision and make it real. 10 years from now, I don't know where I read it. Brad Rencher mentioned it on stage at Silicon Slopes the other day that, you always overestimate what you can do in a year. And we have. Right. We thought, well, hit the first domino and everything's going to fall down and you're going to be knocking down your door. Yeah, and then in 10 years, you kind of underestimate what you can accomplish in 10 years. And if that's true, I mean, we have this massive vision of what we want to accomplish. Right. And if we're underestimating that, it's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. I mean, this podcast has been so fun just to listen to what you're doing and see how passionate you are behind it and you truly believe in it. And it's like, for someone like me, I mean, I'm not even in this industry. I've never worked in procurement, but what you have to say, what you're building, what you're doing is something that's inspirational. It's like, wow, you really took this on to build something that you believe in, and you have a vision for something great, and it's exciting. I'm excited to follow along and to see the updates over the years. And, I feel lucky that I had the opportunity to come in and get you at this early stage because, I'm now going to be looking for Graphite. I'm going to see what you guys are doing, following up, and I'm excited for you to change an industry or to, someday be the LinkedIn of business data.
Yeah. Yeah. And, well, it's been, I appreciate you coming in It's nice to think back through these things. I have sort of tried to blog my way through it, but it's hard to know what I really want to write down publicly. Most of my blogs over the last year have been sort of leadership lessons along the way, really vague and general. I'm not blogging about a product or using it from a marketing perspective, but absolutely there's these, I've wanted to sort of document these things, like what really happened this week.
Right.
Like what happened this week at Graphite. And I think I kind of like, well, I'm not going to blog that. People are really, hey, we sold this thing and we didn't sell that. It was really hard. I was super discouraged like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Right.
I went home every night thinking, why are we doing this? I mean, who really wants to read that? At least at a daily level.
Right.
But, for sure. I'm sure I'll enjoy going back and looking at this in 10 years as well. And hopefully it's that pathway to success. We're going to work our tails off and make sure it happens.
For sure. Before, I kind of end things, is there anything else you thought you wanted to touch on or anything else you want to say? You feel like you've touched it all?
Well, I asked you early on kind of like what are people listening to your podcast looking for? And in my blog, what I'm always trying to do is encourage people. Like you can, whatever idea that you have, you have it. Like it's a blessing, it's a gift. Like believe in yourself and go do what it is that you want to do. And that doesn't mean, I love to run and so you get me talking and by the time we're done, you'll probably think I'm trying to convert you to being a runner. Right. Because I'm just so passionate about that. And the same is true from a startup perspective. You might listen to the podcast and go, oh my gosh, like I've got to go start a business. This isn't for everybody.
Right.
For sure it's not.
Yeah.
But almost everybody has that something that they want to do better, that they've been thinking that they need to either change in their life from a health and wellness perspective or a family perspective or whatever it is. Like we have these ideas all the time.
Right.
Like just step up to the starting line and go. Like just do it.
It's true.
Like, what's the risk? Like we're all going to die and we're probably not going to die of hunger, at least in this country.
Right.
Things are going to work out, and they almost always work out better than you think that they will, even in the darkest of days. And I've had a lot of dark days, in and out of the corporate world. It's going to turn out better than you think it will be. Just kind of trust and move forward and realize that most of what you're going to get out of these things is the learning.
Right.
It's the process, it's the learning, it's the growth, and they fail fast and all this other stuff that people talk about. Great, but it's the learning. You become a better person. We're creatures that are designed to create and learn and grow, and that appetite that we feel to do something is driven by that. I think it's innate to who we are, and don't deny that. Whatever it is, follow that prompting. Go do it. Believe.
I love it.
You can't. How can you really fail if the goal is to learn and grow? You'll learn and grow, and you may lose some money along the way. It's like, so who cares? You're not taking it with you, right?
Earlier you said, if I fail, I can go get another job. And that's what I love. Me and my wife currently own a business together. Started when we were 20 and 19 years old. And the idea behind it was like, if it fails, we're young, we can go get a job. Mm-hmm. Like, let's just start. And I like what you're saying right now, like to learn and to grow. There's so much you can do out there. And if you really feel like you have something out there you want to do, I say go for it.
Yeah. Well, there's things that are risky, and there's times in your life where you just shouldn't take those risks.
Right.
You mentioned earlier on when we were connecting about, interesting to see this old guy kind of starting up this new thing.
Right.
This advisor that I worked with said that entrepreneurs kind of fall into two buckets. One is like so young that like I can risk everything because I'm not losing anything. Right. Right. I'm so early in this. Kind of
how I feel.
And so you see all these super, Zuckerberg, like 18, 19, 20, 25. What are you really going to use? You can lose, you can start over. There's this middle window where you're actually, you probably need some stability for your family and your kids and whatever. Right. And then you reach this other point, you kind of come out of that window where you find entrepreneurs that are sort of beyond that risk window. Something happens in there that helps, gives them some level of security.
Right.
Maybe it's just, you don't have all the expenses of and stress of kids, that you have to deal with. And then, you can take more risk again. I never thought about that earlier on.
Right.
And when I was, 40 years old, I kind of felt like I'd missed the boat because I did feel all this overwhelming sense of, responsibility and obligations that I just didn't feel like I could take risks like I can now. But I would say risks, when I left Adobe, and it's in one of my blogs, I said the same thing, but like I felt like there was going to be no air. Like I was walking into space and I could die. I mean, it just felt overwhelming to walk out of such a comfortable place with I've had a paycheck for 25 years.
Right.
Great benefits. What if I get sick? What if my wife, there's so many scary things about walking out of that to try something else.
It's true.
But then I kind of crossed that threshold and I'm like, well, I didn't die. I mean, it sounds so obvious, but I was so terrified of things that are just demons that aren't even real.
Right.
And it worked. It kind of works. It kind of works out. I don't know how, whatever God you believe in or whatever. I don't know how he does it, but like things work out.
It's true.
Like
when you feel like they're not going to, something always happens that allows it to work out.
Yeah. And I'm not a believer in fate, but it really does feel like things kind of happen around us in life that make things work out. If you have a positive attitude and you pull toward, you try and make it better, somehow it works out. It gets better. Someone will show up, an angel investor or an angel advisor or somebody that gives you, I would not have for a moment believed a year ago the number of people that are surrounding me now willing as resources to give me advice or help or, anything to make this thing work. I never would have believed that. I thought it was this empty, cold space with no oxygen. I'm going to die. And none of that's true. Once you get outside of whatever's scaring you, generally, I think you can look back and go, that's not as scary as I thought it was. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
It's just a ridiculous fear.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate
for your insight and for your story. I'm excited for you, and I appreciate you taking time with me. And I hope everyone that's listening has gained a lot from it, which I know they have. And yeah, I just want to thank you.
All right. Thanks. We'll talk soon.
Okay. We're going to kind of head off.